Oh, this is going to be a good one today. I started my $1 million businesses with no safety net, no investors, no backup plan. And here are the 10 lessons I wish I knew before going out to build my multi-million-dollar companies in my 20s. If you don't know me, my name is Rob Quinn. By the time I was 25, I did 6 President's Clubs in sales. By the time I was 26, launched my first internet company. We did our first $1 million by the time I was 28. And by the time I was 30, we had built 2 $1 million companies and 1 8-figure company. And then from there, I lost it all, but then I got it all back again 2 years later, and we built another $1 million company in 1 year. I'm gonna tell you these lessons today. This isn't gonna be fluff. These are gonna be the wins, the losses, the near burnout, and all the breakthroughs that built these companies over the years, and really what led to me losing everything, which I might do a separate video on what that looked like and how crazy that turmoil was. But today, this is a real talk on what I wish I would have known. So let's talk about the early stages and what the grind actually looked like. Because if you're gonna wanna go out and you wanna start to build your own business, whether you're like me and you were just a sales rep and you're like, dude, I could go do this thing, or you currently are working for somebody else, or you currently own a business and you're like, I wanna go build this bigger thing, or I wanna go build this thing, I'm actually gonna tell you what the real struggles look like. Starters, time. Dude, it was so hard initially because I'm still at my 9 to 5, right? So I had to come home, and in my opinion, most people don't have a 9 to 5 problem, they have 5 to 9 problems. So when I got home from my 9 to 5 job, which I was selling B2B at the time, I came back, I'd go to the gym, I'd get back around 7 p.m., I'd eat some food, and typically from like 7:30 or 8 o'clock p.m. to roughly 2 a.m., I'm on YouTube. I'm doing YouTube University, kind of similar how, you're watching this video right now. I just had to learn as much as I could about all the different options I had available to me to start a business. And at the time, this was 2017, I wanted to learn how to make money online. So that's all I typed into YouTube, is how to make money online. I saw all these different things. Obviously, my career flourished in remote high-ticket sales when I sold for other companies. I had to figure out what all my options were. I made a lot of mistakes leading up to that. So your time investment to be able to learn, if you don't hire a mentor and know exactly what you want to do, hire a mentor for that thing to speed up time and not make as many mistakes, you're going to be spending an uncomfortable amount of time learning about all of your options. Number 2, there's no leads. Like, you can't sell an empty seats. That was the hardest thing. Like, how do I make money if I don't know who to sell to or how to start a conversation? There's also no cash in order for me to do that because, I'm on a 9 to 5 salary and I'm living above my means at the time. So it's like I have no cash. And then also there's tons of self-doubt. Now, I've always believed in myself, which has been very helpful for me because conviction closes and helps execute. But when there's a lot of self-doubt and you're starting out initially, your circle of friends, families, colleagues, acquaintances, they all think at the level you're currently at. So anytime that you say you want this big thing when these things are really where everybody's at, they're going to tell you there's no way that would work because either it failed for them or they've heard of it failing for people, or it's quote unquote too good to be true. And that's really just for other people that are typically born with genius or money or special circumstance. That's how low frequency, low level thinkers think. And unfortunately, when you're trying to break out of that 9 to 5, or what I like to refer to as the matrix, the majority of those people are stuck there. So they're going to make you think that it's a bad idea. And what's funny is initially what they're actually going to say is they're going to support you and say, oh my gosh, you can go do this. I'm so excited for you. And they do that because they believe you're going to fail. So they're always going to support you initially because they're like, oh, he's going to fail. Let him go do his hobby. Let her go do their hobby and they'll be back. That's why they do that. That's why they get really pissed whenever you have success, because now you're elevating yourself and you're finding new friends, and the old friends don't want to elevate themselves. So they're pissed you're leaving them behind, when the reality is they should be pissed that they don't want to go up to your level, right? And it's because they don't believe in themselves. They have more self-doubt minus any confidence like you have to actually start. Next is going to be market saturation, imposter syndrome, and learning to lead. So the market saturation is like one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that stop people from wanting to go do their own thing. They think that there's already so many other businesses doing that thing that they can't go do the thing. And the problem with that thinking is that there are only 2 types of businesses. There aren't a lot of businesses. There's only 2 types. And it's either companies that have a great product or companies that don't. And that's just the reality. So you're not competing against companies that have a bad product unless you intend to intentionally put out a bad product, at which point you're not going to be in business long anyway. So you're really only competing with the companies that have a good product, which are very, very few in comparison to the many. So what you need to go do is make sure that you have your own specific group of people that you service, and you're not trying to service the masses. So this way it's a lot easier to break in. So market saturation actually doesn't exist because there's not a market saturation within a sub niche. So for example, let's say that I'm working with, let's say I'm a relationship coach, and I go in there and I say, I'm a relationship coach for anyone that has a heartbeat. That would be very difficult to resonate with people. And of course, then you're competing against big brands. That would be hard. But let's say that I wanted to focus on being a relationship coach for men of a certain ethnicity. I'm Mexican, so let's say I wanted to be a relationship coach for only Mexicans in their 30s that have been, like maybe through a divorce, right? And have kids. And I haven't been through a divorce, but like, see how I'm stacking all of these things? So what you want to do is stack all these things, and now you're servicing such a sub niche of people that word of mouth is going to spread faster. You could focus on all the same problems for all those same people. And then the imposter syndrome kicks in, right? So now maybe you're starting to do well, or even before you start, you say to yourself, well, I'm not good enough. Why would somebody listen to me for these things? And that's the problem with people starting out. You should be thinking, why shouldn't they listen to me for these things? Because I know what I'm talking about to the extent I know the information. So anytime you're selling to people, there are people, or what I call, there's buyers, right? They're called buyers at different stages. So there's some buyers that are insanely sophisticated. Their business is doing hundreds of millions or billions, maybe even dollars a year. You're probably not going to sell to them. But there's some businesses or people that are at earlier stages of their life or career in business or whatever. And if you know a certain amount of information more than the person that is looking for help, then you become the expert to this person. You may not be the expert to this person yet until your information and knowledge on the topic increases, and all of a sudden you are, right? And then, but now there's another group, the billionaires, the trillionaires, the decamillionaires, like you probably won't service them yet. Or the people that have more experience than you in a topic, you won't service them yet. But you should never feel like you're an imposter to everyone. You might feel that way to people that know more than you in different topics, but if you know more than them in a topic they don't know, then you're still an expert. So you have to rewire your brain and how you see yourself as an imposter. And then the learning to lead. When you start to grow, you start to build something in business, you'll be able to climb a mountain on your own and it'll feel good, but you'll never be able to move a mountain without a village, which is like a team. So learning how to lead is something that, in my opinion, came naturally to me because I have such insanely high standards for myself. But if you don't have those standards for yourself, it does make it difficult to lead because you want more out of people. But if you don't push for more out of yourself, it's one of those like do as I say, not as I do situations. So people won't respect you. And that's why you have high attrition. That also makes it tough to bring people in because you try to compensate with paying people more because maybe you had a lot of money as a solopreneur. Now you want to invest it because you've heard from people that if you invest in people and pay them a lot of money, you want to hire great talent, you pay them a lot of money, they come in. But great leaders know how to sell vision over money because then people are in it for the long haul, they're in it for the growth, they're in it for the upside because a lot comes with that upside. There's the badge of knowing that you grew that thing, there's the status, there's the opportunity to make more as a company grows, which can be negotiated. There's a lot of different things that come with that. So learning how to lead is more starting with you as a person. Are you doing all the things and holding the commitments to yourself? You should never expect anyone else to ever hold a commitment to you if you can't even hold a commitment to yourself. You don't even believe you're worth that. Why on earth would somebody else think that you're worth that either? Do you see where that delusion becomes kind of crazy for people that can't understand the concept of leading? Because they also can't understand the simple concept of even holding commitments. Next, anytime you start a business, start a thing, a lot of people believe that you have to have the best features, the best benefits. So they try to drop all the best features and benefits because they believe they're the best. They don't know how to emotionally tie buyers to the upside of doing something and also to the fear at the cost of not doing something. So because they don't know how to do that, which is definitely a sales skill, in my opinion, or even just like an appreciating people and understanding people skill, if you don't learn how to do that, you're constantly selling features, and I promise you, other companies have better features. So you're gonna start to think if you add more features, you add more value, but you don't realize that that actually decreases your value the more features you add. Because if you sell something to somebody, we have sales trainings on how to position offers on my YouTube channel, but if you're selling something to somebody and they wanted this one thing, but you offer these three things and you tell them the price for the thing that you offer is, let's say, $1,000. Well, what if the prospect says, I don't want those two things, can I get it for less money? You're going to say, no, that's the price, at which point they'll be like, oh, I'll go somewhere else. Or you're going to discount it because you've let them sell you on how your thing is worth less value, so you should sell it because they're only going to use one thing. So you're tying all the value to a feature and a benefit and not an emotional attachment to what they're going to be getting out of using this vehicle to make their life better. Okay, so what I want to do now is a really quick breakdown of these 10 rich lessons that I wish I knew, and also the wisdom behind each thing so you can really be able to understand why they're so important. Number one, clarity always beats complexity. Okay, if you can be more clear in what you're doing, everyone can get behind a simple, very clear mission or strategy or game plan. Typically, it's also easier to execute. And when people see simple, they can relate that to easy. And even though it's not easy, if they know it's simple, they can continue that feedback loop of like, I can do this because there's less steps. I can do this because I understand it. I can do this because I know other people have done it. So this is like constant reinforcement of that kind of like mental fortitude of knowing what's possible because it makes sense that it should be. When you add complexity in there though, if they don't understand something, similar to a buyer, right? A confused buyer always says no. If somebody's on your team and doesn't understand something, then of course a confused person is always going to move slower. Also added complexity means that there's going to be more variables that can go wrong. So there's just so much downside to complexity. Simple scales, complex fails. It's a golden rule. Number two is that mindset is a multiplier. You are going to grow as your self-concept grows, meaning that the more that you develop different lenses of thought and different ways to see the world, so different lenses to see the world, the more that you can have additional perspective and not just relate to more people and be able to meet more people where they are, but you're also going to have a heightened state of awareness. So this is going to allow you to be able to know what battles to pick, what battles to quote unquote lose, because you know that you're winning the war in the end. You're going to be able to understand so much more about people and what really drives them internally rather than externally. And you're always going to be able to get a longer relationship out of those types of situations than you will with like external motivation. All that starts with the mind. It'll multiply every effort to be so much more than it would have been if somebody was looking at a basic thought. Number three is systems over hustle. Man, I used to put in 90 hours a week as a sales rep because I truly believe that that was how you get the outcome. If I would have had better systems around ways that I was able to follow up with all my leads and segmentation and to be able to get people to sell for me and creating a more efficient sales army, which is like referrals, I would have had much better numbers. Same thing with a sales team. If you can duplicate something and not just do it, you're always going to be able to not just create that outcome more often that you want, because you'll be able to have the same assembly line like a McDonald's hamburger, but also you can duplicate that with other people. So the person that's already there can do the same outcome, but you could also hire somebody else with similar skill levels, give them what's called an SOP, system operating procedure, whether it's on a video or a document, and they'll be able to do that same thing in the same order to get a similar outcome. You see how that works? Systems will always trump hustle. Number four, track everything. If you are not tracking everything, then you are leaving things up to chance. What gets measured gets managed. And if you are not managing the things that move the needle, that is a direct correlation to you not prioritizing those things, which means that you do not prioritize the business as a whole. Even though you might tell yourself that, yeah, I care about the business, I do everything for the business. If you say that you care about your family and you literally never show up to anything, you don't provide for them, you do literally nothing for them, it's hard to believe that person cares about their family. Wouldn't you agree? It's the same thing for business. If you're not managing all the things that actually move the needle in business and just say you care about the business, do you see how there's a misalignment there? So you need to make sure that you're tracking everything and making all of your decisions strictly based on data and not emotion. Okay, there's no place in business for emotion, only intuition and data-driven decision-making. Intuition is decisions made based on experience. That's what's called a gut feeling. Emotion is a reactive thing. So something happens to you and then you immediately react based on a feeling, okay? That's emotion. Emotion is one of the most dangerous things you can put into business. Everything has to be non-biased and strictly based on data and intuition. Next is that volume solves most problems, meaning that you probably heard mo money, mo problems, you know the song, right? Well, in this case, you want that because it's way easier to deal with things in volume, because then you have more of something to deal with the other thing than it is to try to solve problems with less volume, because it takes longer to know what's working. So if you say to yourself, well, I'll just move slow and then I'll be easier to figure things out. The problem with that thinking is the slower you move, the slower it takes to find the data. So in my opinion, let's say I had $10,000 to spend in a month to figure something out. I would rather front load 10 grand into the first 2 weeks or the first week, because my ability to course correct and to make decisions on data and knowing what data specifically is a leading indicator or a lagging indicator, I'll be able to know what decisions to make based on that and pivot fast. That's referred to as a course correcting muscle. If you understand those things, you can front load an investment, solve problems faster, and get a much faster return. Because think about it, if you spend that 10 grand over 4 weeks, you're gonna have to wait 4 weeks to get the same information you would get in 1 week. The only reason that's bad is if you do not believe in yourself enough to know how to course correct or pivot. If you have not conditioned those muscles, then yes, that's when that becomes a risky decision. So for me, volume solves most problems if you actually understand what it is you're trying to fix. Next, delegate fast or stay stuck. So many leaders get stuck here. They do the thing, they've gotten used to doing the thing because when they do the thing, an outcome happens. But if you cannot systemize your approach and pass that on to somebody else so you can buy your time back to better leverage your skill of building into grooming up the next person that could be the next leader in the company, or to build out the next thing that you then begin to delegate, or even better, you hire somebody and you understand how to ask questions so you can know that they're having success in maybe a particular skill you have very little knowledge on, you can delegate without even having to build the thing yourself initially. So if you do not learn to delegate, you will always be the problem as the business owner or the solopreneur or whatever. You will always stay stuck. And if you are not prioritizing the skill of delegation, the best thing you should do for yourself is at least look in the mirror and admit you're meant to stay small. Because anything other than that is a lie to yourself. If you do not learn to delegate, you will never be a big player, period. Next is to build audiences and skills at the same time. There's no reason why you should not put your life out there so you can share the lessons you're learning, share the experiences, share the cool things for where your life is going. Okay, that's referred to as building a brand. There's very little downside in building a brand in comparison to not building a brand. So if you do not build a brand, you need to be okay with things being harder. If you're not okay with things being harder, then you need to understand you are delusional. Okay, most business owners are not looking through the lenses of activity this way, so they're not seeing that they're the problem, right? You need to build a brand while you develop a skill. While you're developing a skill, you're also going through lessons. I can't even talk right now, but you're developing a skill and you're learning things while you develop the skill, not just the skill itself, but all the lessons that come along with what it looks like to do that wrong, what makes it difficult, or why it's so important to learn the skill, and then what that skill is getting you in life. These are all things that you would want to document on social media or even letters to yourself. These are all things that you want to make sure that you're doing. Build your audience while you build your skill. Next is that your identity must match your income goal. I see people all the time say, I want to make $1 million in a year. I want to make $1 million in a month. But they literally can't even wake up on time. They can't even drink a gallon of water a day. They can't even show up to their kids' stuff on time. They can't even be present for their team. They can't even do this thing or that thing. And in my opinion, those are all very simple things to do. If you cannot do those things, you are not meant to be a millionaire. You are not meant to make a lot of money. You are not meant to have the big things in life. Those are the small commitments. If you can't commit to the small commitments and execute those well, you will not, or I don't even know at what point you convince yourself that you are going to do the more complex things more frequently and do those well, if you can't do simple things frequently and well. Does that make sense? I think that logic should be pretty easy to follow. Next is you need to embrace boring. This is something that I really struggled with, having been like a visionary, a founder, entrepreneur, is the shiny object syndrome of doing so many different things. When I was just selling, it was easy because my whole vision was to be number one. That was it. I had to be the best sales rep in the world. And that's why I did 6 President's Clubs in sales in 3 different billion-dollar industries, door-to-door, B2C, and B2B by the time I was 25, because I spent all of my time learning sales. I spent literally that entire decade just learning sales. And I got really good at it. And people in business, it becomes harder because when things get slow, you think, well, I could just start another thing and get it to that point. But you don't realize that that becomes your threshold. So let's say that threshold was 10 grand a month. You get one business to that and then things get hard. Well, then you're like, well, instead of pushing through the hard and doing the same boring stuff, let's try a new traffic source and shut this other one off. Let's try to do this thing, or let's go and build another company and do that. And then you get stuck at 10K because all the problems at certain milestones of business are very similar. So you never get good at problem solving, which is a leadership skill you have to learn in order to build a team. So you can see how that kind of falls back on also the self-development that you have to have in order to lead. It all comes full circle. And last but not least, this kind of sums it all up, is that you are the bottleneck and you are the breakthrough. So in turn, like all the biggest changes that came with building these multi-million-dollar companies was not in me getting better at doing the thing, but rather so me changing and elevating my thinking to be able to operate more like an owner, like first a CEO, which is an owner operator, and then start to operate more like an owner, which is like how to own a thing, how to hire people that hire the people that do the things, like getting better with thinking as a different level in kind of this structure or hierarchy, if you will. I don't like using that term, but that's kind of what it is, right? So when I was a sales rep, all I thought about was doing the thing in sales. And I became an owner operator. I thought about learning all the skills that I needed to do. And then I became more of a higher up position as an owner operator, as an executive, where we had team members. And I thought about, okay, I need to be great at doing the leadership. And then as I've moved more towards ownership thinking, I had to think about, okay, who can I hire that I can trust to know how to do the thinking, to hire leaders and train leaders that hire people to manage to do the things, right? So that's kind of like the elevation of that whole sequence. Once I started doing that, that's when the big shift happened in the business to where I didn't have to do nearly as much, but it continued to grow without me having to do all those things. Funny enough, that's actually how we got to our first $100,000 a month, because as a solopreneur in 2018, I got to 60 grand a month by myself. And then I couldn't handle all the clients. So we actually dropped down to 20 grand a month. I lost a lot of clients. And then I met at the time, he was an appointment setter, now my business partner at the sales agency, but he came in and he did a role for me that I wasn't doing well myself, which was appointment setting. And so he was setting all my appointments and I was closing the deals. And then we hit our first $115,000 a month in 3 months. So we went from 20 grand a month to 115 grand a month by me just doing the marketing and closing deals and him setting the sales calls. That's an example of just one thing I had to delegate in order to have that dramatic quantum leap. So to sum all this up, you do not need $1 million idea. You need $1 million execution. And these 10 things will get you there. Shoot, man, there was a freaking guy, you'll have to Google it. He made $1 million on selling a pet rock, okay? I can almost guarantee, I can't guarantee the sun will come up, but I can almost guarantee that you have some skill in you right now watching this video. You have some skill in you that has more value than buying a pet rock. I can't guarantee that for sure, but I can say that in pretty good confidence, more than likely. These lessons took me more than a decade to learn. I started entrepreneurship and sales when I was 18. At the time of making this video, I'm 33. So in over a decade's worth of pain that it took me to learn these lessons the hard way, you got to learn them here in about 10, 15 minutes. So use them. Lastly, comment below whatever your biggest breakthrough was that you're going to apply into your business, into your life, down in the comments, or anything else that you'd like to see, because I like to make videos based on questions in the comments, and I go and reply to the comments myself. Also, go follow me on Instagram, right? I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff in my life, and I post like daily tips and stuff on there at official Rob Quinn. And as always, I want to make sure I can help you all out in every way possible, whether that be like a free option or some kind of like paid option. I put all those links in the description of these videos, so you can go check those out too, in case you want to kind of get a little bit more help with whatever you have going on. So that's all we got for today's video. And don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Happy selling.